Welcome back to the Trish Regan Show, everyone. I hope you had a terrific weekend. We are getting off to the races here this Monday with news that it looks like AOC could be heading for a whole lot of trouble. A whole lot of trouble because Pam Bondi is on her tail in a pretty massive way. We're going to get to all of that. Plus, Letitia James, she's freaking out because she's apparently running out of money. She's terrified. What's going to happen to New York State if they can't get all their funding and spend money on all their various programs? So we're going to talk about the latest and greatest out of Letitia James in the effort to try and go after Trump yet again. But you know what? This time, it's not working. Not working at all. And, oh, Snow White. I'm sorry. Like, this movie is DOA. All you have to do is watch what went down between the two actresses last night on stage at the Academy Awards, and it tells you everything you need to know. We'll get into that. We got 25% tariffs kicking in tomorrow. A big, big deal. Plus, Zelensky coming out and saying a few things that didn't make Donald Trump very happy. We will discuss. But welcome to the show. Good to have you here. AOC looking like she's going to get sued, and she's freaking out. She's actually, I think, legitimately scared. She's also doing some political posturing around this one. She went on to NPR this morning and basically doubled down without totally admitting that she was doubling down on all that she's been up to, which is effectively, if you ask Pam Bondi, obstructing justice. Here we go.
You had a recent dispute, if that's the right word, with Tom Homan, the president's Homeland Security czar, so-called. You held an online forum, a Know Your Rights forum, that he didn't like. What were you doing? What was your goal as you saw it?
My job is to educate and act as a liaison of critical information to my constituents. And I was informing all of my constituents of their constitutional protections, and in particular, their constitutional protections against illegal search and seizure in the United States.
Homan was upset, I suppose, because he felt that you were giving advice to people who were here illegally. Mm-hmm. Were you?
I was giving advice to all of my constituents. Yeah. He
said he was going to report you, or even that he did reach out to the Department of Justice. Have you heard from the Department of Justice?
I have not, and I intend on reaching out to the Department of Justice to inquire.
Really? What would your question be for the Department of Justice?
Well, there is a member of the Trump administration who is threatening and seeks to open an inquiry, and are you going to do it?
What would you learn? What do you hope to learn from that exchange?
I think it's important to know where this administration stands and if they intend on using political intimidation to silence their critics.
I have to be careful about not laughing too hard. I'm still getting over a cold. Okay, so she's all freaking out because she's basically doing something illegal, right? She's talking about my constituents. I'm sorry, but your constituents, many of whom are here illegally in the United States, really aren't quite your constituents, AOC. I do think you might want to answer to the people that actually really are legally in your district, maybe, sort of. I mean, Tom Homan, he's got no use for her right now. Tom Homan is the border czar in charge of all of this, and they go way back. Look, I'm going to show you. But first, look at what he told Maria just this morning. Maria Bartiromo, my good friend, former colleague, actually, at Fox Business. I want you to see.
This is the guy that you locked in a jail cell. That's who we want to talk to.
Well, I mean, look, you've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez doing webinars to explain to illegal immigrants how to evade ICE arrest, and then she tweeted out after something you said maybe she's going to be in trouble now, and she says maybe he can learn to read the Constitution would be a good place to start. She's continuing her resist efforts against your efforts, Tom.
Look, I forgot more about the Constitution, immigration enforcement as you ever know. I mean, I had to educate her during congressional testimony that entering the country illegally is a crime. So, whatever. But what she needs to do is read the statutes enacted by Congress. Title 8, United States Code 1324, United States. Title 8, United States Code 1324 and 25. That's what she needs to read, because it's illegal to enter this country. It's a crime to enter this country illegally. Not only that, when you harbor and conceal and impede law enforcement, that's a felony. So what she's doing, she says she's, educating them as to the constitutional rights. And we all know they got constitutional rights, but what she's really doing, you and I and the rest of the country knows, she's trying to teach them how to evade law enforcement. Now, I just said, well, out of the gate, we're concentrating on public safety threats, national security threats. So she's educating those in the country illegally with a significant criminal conviction, public safety threat. Don't open your door. Don't talk to us. Here's how you invade law enforcement. Let's hope she's not educating the next person who gets out and murders a young college student in Georgia. I mean, these are bad people we're looking for. So she can call it education all she wants, but we all know it's about evading law enforcement. These people have been ordered removed. The people we're looking for right now have final orders. They're criminals. They're in the country illegally. A judge has ordered them removed. They become a fugitive. And these are the folks she's helping? So I've asked the Department of Justice to look at this. Where is the line on impediment? Where does that fine line so we can instruct ICE officers what they can do when people don't open the doors or try to evade their arrest? So I simply asked DOJ, give me a legal opinion, because every Department of Justice will interpret things differently. What is the legal opinion on impediment? And we'll see what happens.
How significant are the businesses that the dangerous cartels have...
We will see what will happen. And again, my source is telling me they're looking very seriously at this, and you can expect this. It's imminent. Pam Bondi is going to be arresting or suing one AOC for impeding law officers, federal law officers, in terms of what they need to do. And don't forget, like all day long, the feds actually have jurisdiction on this one. When it comes to the border, that is the one area, the federal government, that they absolutely, positively, unquestionably have jurisdiction on. It's why we had problems down in Texas, right? Abbott couldn't do what he needed to do in Texas. He wanted to keep the wall up. They were taking the wall down. But it's because federal law actually says that the federal government is the one that's going to regulate who's in, who's out of this country. Here is Tom Homan a couple years back dusting it up with one AOC. So when he says, he knows he's forgotten more about the Constitution than she'll ever know, he's not kidding. He's already told her about Title 8, Section 13, 24, and 25.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their...
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from his
Mr. Holman,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're in the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the memo is submitted to the record for review. Inspector General Costello, one last thing. Is there...
So, as I said, this kind of goes way back. They've had a history here, and now she's out there, she's doing these seminars, she's telling people this is how you avoid them. Ilhan Omar is doing the exact same thing, and I think that she's going to be in jeopardy now too. But listen, you can't do that, right? You're impeding law enforcement from doing their jobs. She's got this thing that she posted onto Instagram. If you see ICE in public, make sure you verify, you document. Oh, and then, si ves a ICE en público, verificar, okay? Documentar. So she's all doing it in Spanish as well, just to make sure that nobody actually misses out because she doesn't actually speak Spanish. So this does seem to be kind of basic, guys. I mean, if they're looking for bad guys, if they're looking for the criminals, and she's out there hosting webinars and putting this information out, now she wants to know, oh, am I going to get arrested for this? And then she's trying to, I think, my estimation, not only is she scared, right, that she may, but she's actually trying to politically posture herself ahead of this to try and say, oh, well, this is just him being big bad old Trump, and this is him using his political capabilities. No, this is him using the law. In other words, you are a member of Congress and you're out there just flaunting it. I mean, you doubled down on it with NPR today. So AOC, you do have a little bit of a problem. She sent a letter here on Friday to Pam Bondi, and I just want to share with you some excerpts from this one because it's clear that she is very worried that, in fact, of course, she probably wants to make herself the story too, but she's getting worried that she's actually now running the risk of being arrested by the feds. I right to request clarity on whether the Department of Justice has yielded to, quote, political pressure and attempts to weaponize the agency against elected officials whose speech they disagree with. Over the past 2 weeks, Border czar Tom Homan has gone on multiple forums threatening political prosecution against me, citing resources I distributed informing my constituents and the American public of their constitutional and legal rights. But you see, no, you don't really have those constitutional legal rights. If you're in the country illegally, you can't just completely evade ICE. I mean, and not to mention, like, what about the greater good here? What about the fact that you have people that have lost their lives at the hands of some of these illegal immigrants? I mean, we've got an estimation from ICE of some 650,000 people that are in this country illegally and that are known criminals. And we're talking like homicide. We're talking assault. We are talking about really, 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 really bad guys. 650,000 plus of them that we know of, right? And you don't want to allow law enforcement to be able to arrest them? You don't want ICE to be able to go in and arrest them? And look, I'm sorry, but you know what? If you got a friend who's a really, really bad guy, and ICE knows that that bad guy is here, and they go to your apartment and they get the bad guy, and you happen to be there and you're here illegally as well, then you're going to get rounded up. And she's trying to say, oh, well, you're never supposed to invite them into your home to begin with. You're never supposed to open the door. You're never supposed to give any kind of documentation. They're asking, by the way, in this green light law that they have in New York, they're asking that people give over their information. And the DMV is sort of in conflict here because they've been handing out licenses to people who are not supposed to be here because they don't have the proper credentials. So it's all mixed up. And this is sort of one of these federal versus state cases, but it's pretty clear cut. All right, like it's actually very clear cut. The feds have the jurisdiction in this one. So if she's going to impede law enforcement, then she actually is on the wrong side of the law, and they are going to have the ability to go after her, just as I imagine they are going to go after one Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar likely to be next after one AOC, because she too is out there giving webinars and seminars saying, hey, you know what? You don't have to say anything to ICE. You can avoid ICE, and here's how you do it. Here she is. And in this particular okay, I know we don't speak Arabic, so I'm just going to jump in. Here she is in her native language, speaking to people in her community, saying, hey, this is how you do it. Here's how you avoid ICE. Well, this, again, stands in the face of everything that that Tom is saying you can't do. So Ilhan, you too, just like AOC, are absolutely in violation of some of the most basic laws here, which leads me to believe that Ilhan Omar will likely also be next. I mean, Brandon Gale is the representative from Texas, brand new, junior representative from Texas, and he was on CNN recently talking about the importance of going after somebody like Ilhan Omar because she doesn't really seem to appreciate some of the American values that all of us hold dear. And she's out there informing people on how to avoid ICE. It kind of seems like it's at odds with what we need to be or want to be as a country.
I just want to follow up with this post that you had on X. You said that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, U.S. citizen, should be deported to her home country of Somalia. Omar became a naturalized citizen at 17. Why did you do that?
Listen, my colleague Ilhan Omar, she is an American citizen. She is a member of the House of Representatives. I didn't call for her to be deported, but I did say that America would be better off were she deported. I think that there is a serious problem, particularly given after the past 4 years of open borders, of Democrats facilitating the invasion of our country by illegal aliens. My colleague Ilhan Omar was advising illegal alien Somalis on how to evade ICE detection. That is as un-American as you can possibly get. It's unbecoming of a congressperson.
What evidence?
And I absolutely
where are
think
you
that
getting
it is
that from
disgusting.
specifically? Where are you getting that from specifically?
We have the audio of her doing that.
But do
It
you
was
think
in an
that
interview.
she is a duly elected member of Congress?
She has a duty
constituents
to uphold
put
the
her in
values
office.
and customs of America,
you're
not to represent foreign illegal aliens who shouldn't be here to begin with. And I think that raises serious
is
questions.
helping people understand what the laws are. But listen,
that raises serious. To whom is she most loyal? Illegal aliens, Somalis, or American citizens?
She's representing
I think
her
that's a very
constituents
legitimate question.
as a member of Congress. Congressman Brandon Gill, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate this conversation.
Okay. So the CNN anchor was, as usual, a little bit mixed up. But anyway, yeah, we got the tape. I just showed you the tape. I mean, Brendan's saying we got the audio tape. We can do even better. Hey, we got the videotape. And then AOC's doubling down on it too. So I do imagine that these women are going to be in a lot of trouble, as they should be. Again, like law and order, folks, law and order. And they keep saying, oh, we're here, we're protecting our constituents. I'm sorry, how are you protecting your constituents? Your constituents are the ones that are saying, hey, we need a little law and order around here. We actually need to be able to enforce all of these rules regarding migration. Look who got voted in. All right, and before you sit there and tell me, well, Queens is different, I don't actually think New York is changing. You look at some of the demographic data that came out of New York and New Jersey and some of these typically blue states, and what you find is that a lot of people, they agreed on this one. Immigration was a massive issue. Immigration and inflation, right, in this election, for sure. And so I think that, and not to mention DEI and a few other things, so I think that you're going to start to see a lot of changes. And it's about time, because we need some semblance of law and order. I mean, I remember back in the day, and I've played some of these sound bites for you guys, when all the Democrats actually did believe that you couldn't come here illegally. I mean, yeah, you can go back to the 90s. You once had the late Dianne Feinstein saying that we're not going to become the welfare state for Mexico. Well, you better believe it, we're not going to become the welfare state for Mexico. And yet you fast forward to here we are in 2024. We are the welfare state for Mexico. I mean, you've got the Roosevelt Hotel that up until recently, until Eric Adams had the, because maybe Donald Trump was in office and had been elected. I mean, they were giving out $350 a week because people had to buy their specialty food items. And you had people staying in the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown that, get this, we were paying the Pakistani government $200 million a year for. Yeah, because they owned the hotel. Like, that makes any sense? Your taxpayer dollars going to that? I don't think so. So all of this is getting rethought. All while, by the way, New York is struggling with serious crime problems. I mean, just think about the horrible thing that happened on the subway. I don't like to think about it. But the reality is all of this has to change, and it is changing, whether these women like it or not. You know who really doesn't like it? Letitia James. We're going to talk about that coming up, because she's just having a fit. She's right there with AOC. Pretty soon she may find her little tushy in a cell as well, right? Quick shout out for one of our great sponsors here on the Trish Regan program. That would be American Heart for Gold. We love them because they help us bring you this show for free, right? Every single day. 1-844-495-1115. You can get up to $15,000 in free silver right now. Text Trish to 65532. I'll tell you, this is important when you think about what's going on within the world, right? I think there's still a lot of fear about inflation. Even with Donald Trump in office, and I've said this, I was actually tweeting this out last night. Look, I mean, you got to cut him some slack. He's only been there like a month and a few days. But there's some big things that need to get addressed, and it's going to be challenging, like the tariffs, for example, to address those simultaneously while dealing with inflation. Now, hopefully the Federal Reserve may help out a little bit. But the more they help, also the more they contribute to inflation. So there you go. It's like this catch-22. Look at gold, right? Amidst it all, look at gold. You can get up to $15,000, as I said, in free silver right now from our friends at American Heart for Gold. The other thing I would tell you to do is still pay close attention to these markets, because you saw a big sell-off today, although we lifted up a little bit at the bottom as we got the news that Donald Trump was announcing those 25% tariffs that do take place on Mexico and on Canada tomorrow. It's interesting. It all relates back, right, to this immigration issue, which is so challenging for people. And he's saying, hey, you know what? You guys got to do your part. And you haven't been doing your part. And so because of that, we are going to slap these tariffs on. And we should not have a trade deficit like we do with these guys. You go back to NAFTA and Clinton, and that's actually sort of the source of the deterioration, if you would, in a lot of the manufacturing jobs and manufacturing center here in the USA. So that needs to change. And he can't do it overnight, but gosh, I mean, he's only been there a little over a week, and what do you know? Things are starting to shift. So one other thing I just wanted to shout out, as long as we're talking about money right now, do take a look at My 76 Research, American Resilience, Inflation Protection, Income Builder Portfolio, all created for you guys. Go to 76research.com, use code word dollar. My gift to you, just $1 a month for the first 2 months. And those portfolios, we just issued some quarterly reports on them today. So that's fresh in your inbox if you are a subscriber to the portfolios. Okay, what did I tell you? Letitia James is freaking out. Letitia James is running out of cash there in New York. Oh gosh, what are they going to do if they don't have the money to go after Donald Trump? I don't know. And so she's panicking. She's filing new motions. This just came out in part because she's so stressed about these money problems because, well, Pam Bondi is not only a thorn in AOC's side, she is a definite thorn in one Letitia James's side. So the AG has said, oh, we were preparing for this, but apparently you weren't prepared enough because already you have lacked success, and now she's filing a second motion in order to go back at the judge and see if she can find a new workaround here. Pam Bondi has ordered the DOJ to pause all federal funding for sanctuary cities, because if you have people like Letitia James sitting there saying, hey, we have our green light laws, we don't have to abide by your laws, well, then this gets into somewhat murky territory, right? So she's freaking out, and she, as such, just filed a second motion for enforcement in their ongoing lawsuit against the Trump administration for what they call, quote, illegal and destructive freeze on federal funding. But here's the question, is it really illegal? In other words, if you're so out of step with everything that's going on, are you really actually, as the federal government, do they have a right to say, hey, we're going to hold you accountable? In other words, we've already seen that some judges are very reluctant, if you would, to make a decision on this. And so it's getting kicked around. That certainly gives him the benefit of time. And it also suggests that, well, in the meantime, she's going to be up a creek without a paddle. So we got the news, was it last week or the week before? It's kind of blurring together after a while. This does this to you, right? This Trump news cycle. But we learned that the judge was like, no, sorry, they can, for example, go forward, DOJ can go forward, and they can get the information on federal employees and look for opportunities for budget cuts. And now the other biggie is whether or not the administration can continue here blocking hundreds of millions of dollars that have come in grants for federal emergency management agency challenges, etc. So this is sort of setting up a very interesting legal challenge. And I think people come out on two different sides of the law, but I would say that ultimately, one of the biggest problems for Letitia James, and the reason that she's running out of money, is that you're going to have sort of more junior judges that are going to be reluctant to rule against the president. Think about this, guys. What is actually in his way? Well, the threat of impeachment, I guess, but he's got the whole Congress and he's got the Senate. I mean, heck, he just got everybody he wanted. He got Tulsi, he got Pete, he got Kash Patel. So do you really think that anybody in Congress is going to stand in the way? And if he's saying, you know what, turn off the money spigot because these people are not following federal law, then guess what? They're going to turn off the money spigot. It's kind of like, I was using this example last week during the Zelensky, on Friday during the Zelensky press conference, when it was like, Dad was like, hey kid, you know what? No more. We're not supporting this lifestyle. We're not supporting you anymore. You got to get with it. And he's kind of telling New York and other sanctuary states, I mean, look, she's leading the charge here. She's very proud of that. She put this press release out today. Attorney General James and the Attorney Generals of California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, goes on and on. Also Connecticut, Colorado, Arizona, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine. Basically every blue state has filed a lawsuit. And they're not getting anywhere. I mean, they can keep filing motions, but again, I think judges at this point are very reluctant to interfere with the executive power, knowing that really that would be Congress that would do that. So if Congress is making a decision not to jump in and say, hey, you can't do that, then actually the president does have a lot of power if you think about it. He's the one that has the Treasury Department under him, and all he has to do is tell Scott Bessent, you know what, shut off the money spigot, and it's shut off. And unless they actually get in line, then they're going to have some problems. I mean, it's going to take time, I guess, to work out. Maybe it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. But gosh darn it, it's almost kind of like they're getting exactly what they deserve, right? Because of everything that we went through. Think about Letitia James and all that she put this country through and all that she put Donald Trump through. You know the drill, right? I mean, she was going after him from day one. It was like her only motivation, her only way perhaps to raise money politically. And so this is what she did, and this is what she talked about. And she went after Donald Trump for something that, frankly, is not something that you can go after him for. And I'm still getting kind of annoyed with the Second Court of Appeals there, if you would, in New York, because they know the answer to this. She had absolutely no business interfering in a private matter between Donald Trump, a customer of Deutsche Bank. So he's the client. He gets a loan from Deutsche Bank. He tells Deutsche Bank that his collateral is Mar-a-Lago. He gives some number that's larger than 18 million because apparently Letitia James is thinking that it's only worth 18 million, which is probably one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. But let's just start with the premise that she has no business assessing property values, right? She is an attorney. Not a very good one at that, but she has no business assessing property values. That's Deutsche Bank's job. So she got herself in the middle of this one. And now I'm kind of laughing because they threw all this legal stuff at him. And, you had like Stephen Miller and others like sitting there twiddling their thumbs during all this. Well, they weren't twiddling their thumbs. They were working very diligently on all the legal opportunities that could come their way once they were back in charge. And so they've thrown like 75 executive orders out. And Letitia and others just can't keep up with it, right? So the amount of sort of incoming. And so now here she is trying to file something else. And I'm telling you, it's not going to get anywhere. So she's going to get stuck not having any money for New York. And how is that going to make people in New York feel, right? Like if you're not getting those things that maybe you should, you think they're going to blame Donald Trump? No, they're going to blame Letitia James. And you know what? If she doesn't get her act with the program, not only is she going to be voted out of office, but she might actually have some other issues, shall we say, as well. I mean, and that's why I'm so annoyed that the Court of Appeals in New York has not gotten back to us with their verdict. I think that now it's getting into Kash Patel territory and Pam Bondi territory where they actually need to go in and say, listen, this woman did some stuff that really was not okay. And we have to question how much this was in coordination with the Biden White House. Merrick Garland has in the past really avoided those questions. I know that Matt Gaetz from Florida, when he was then in Congress, was really trying to push that issue, and he couldn't quite get Merrick Garland to admit anything that was going on. But it has since come out that, for example, in Georgia, you had Fani Willis's BF, the boyfriend, actually coordinating with the Biden White House on that particular case. So one could anticipate that that was likely happening in New York as well. Alvin Bragg, after all, they sent somebody from the feds to work on his legal team as he was bringing cases forward. None of those cases went anywhere, so they weren't really on good legal ground. And I just wonder if there's going to be some other price for one Ms. Letitia James to pay, as Mike Davis told my friend.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote.
Yeah, I would say that Benny's right. It's not the same Trump administration, because this is an administration that had had 4 years on the sidelines, basically to make sure that they weren't on defense. Don't forget, last time, in some ways, like, this is the beauty of it, right? Had he won in 2020, he would have still been fighting the system over and over and over again. And it would have just been more of the same. And now he comes in and he's like, I'm not fighting it. I mean, you can fight me all you want. I'm already fighting you, right? Like, he's on offense, and he comes in, 75 executive orders. He puts in tariffs. He tells Mexico, he tells Canada, you guys got to get with the program. He tells New York, you guys got to get with the program. And if everyone gets with the program, then guess what? We're going to have a united country and we're going to move forward and we're going to be able to do great things. But if they're not with the program, then we go right back to Pam Bondi ordering a pause on federal funding for those sanctuary cities. And that means that Letitia James, I'm sorry, you're not going to have any money in the state of New York. And Kathy Hochul, you're not going to have any money in the state of New York. Listen, they're going to be in trouble. I mean, constituents are not going to put up with that. Offhand, thank you so much for the generosity. I'm going to get to your comment. I mean, this is really rather revolutionary in that we are really setting up a situation where you have feds versus state. But when it comes down to this one issue, when it comes to the border, the feds have the jurisdiction. When it comes to the money, sure, you can fight it out in court. But it does seem that Congress actually has the control over the executive branch. They're the ones that theoretically would impeach. And you know that there's no way in HELL that's happening. He has the Congress eating right out of the palm of his hand. And so, look, I get it. The left doesn't like him. It's why they lied and lied and lied. It's why we had 51X spooks in the intelligence community saying, forget about Trump. You know what? He's telling you a bunch of lies on Biden's laptop. It never belonged to Hunter. I mean, I'm just like amazed. I keep laughing and I have to be careful because I have not been feeling well, you guys. I'm still getting over my cold. But you know what does make me very happy? Take a look at our performance. It's just ending for the month. Actually, we just put March's numbers out. And once again, we beat the S&P, which is a big deal. Like, that's sort of what the entire industry is trying to do. And this is just, really smart people like Rob and myself, might I say, and we've been able to beat the S&P yet again. So take a look at the portfolios when you can. I think it would be it would behoove you, shall we say. Use my code, use dollar. At some point, we can't offer that. It's supposed to be a limited time offer, but you know me, I like to give you stuff. So $1 a month for the first 2 months, and it goes to $9.95. But there's lots of names in there for you to look at specifically within the model portfolios. All right. Amid the news of the tariffs, we got the Zelensky stuff entering a new chapter. Wow, we had some fireworks, did we not, on Friday? It was really something. And now, apparently Zelensky, and I watched it, I don't speak Ukrainian, forgive me, but AP did this interview with him, and he said via the translation, and that is the headline, of course, that they went with, that this war is going to go on and on. I'm a little confused because it seemed as though yesterday he was out telling another news organization, perhaps it was Reuters, that he would go along with the U.S. And so it was like, all right, well then what was Friday about, really? And I think he's kind of mixed up and he's all over the place. But here's Donald Trump referring to this Associated Press interview, the Associated Press, which refuses to recognize the Gulf of America.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement. But he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. In other words, Donald Trump wants this whole thing to end. That's what this is about. That's what you saw in terms of those fireworks, which were pretty magnificent. But I guess, magnificent perhaps is the wrong word choice because we want a solution to this thing. And I do believe that Zelensky came there looking for that solution. He wanted the solution, but he had been reportedly prepped by some people on the left before going into those meetings. He needed that deal. But the bias that was coming from some people on the left was rather significant because, they want him to stand tall for Ukraine, whatever. And they didn't want him to just give in to Donald Trump and the mineral deal. I mean, everybody knows that really the only way out of this is to have the U.S. involved in some way, shape, or form. And Donald Trump wants to get paid for it, right? He doesn't want to just keep shelling out money. So the only answer really is the mineral deal. I think every pragmatist would tell you that. In fact, I even saw one CNN anchor, Jake Tapper, who's a good spokesperson for the deep state, if you would. And he actually came out with a tweet over the weekend saying he spoke to somebody who had been once extremely supportive of Ukraine, saying, really, the only options right now, as they laid them out, the only good option would be to take this deal with the United States with Donald Trump and try and actually come to some kind of solution here. So that's where we are. And yet, for whatever reason, Zelensky, perhaps because he had these people in his ear, went into that meeting on Friday, and it wound up deteriorating around 40 minutes in. I mean, you can actually like mark the moment, in part because J.D. Vance was sort of like, hey, you know what? Like, we got to use a little more diplomacy here. You got Zelensky freaking out saying, well, no, it's Putin, it's Putin, it's Putin. And finally, Trump's like, I've had it. Like, you have no cards. It was like watching an episode of The Apprentice.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's right. Right? In other words, he needed us. He still needs us. And I'm just looking at some of your comments here, which are interesting. Michael Varney making the point, I won't say the word, but in Ukrainian, and you heard him muttering this, it's alleged. I'm going to be careful how I phrase this, only because, again, I don't speak Ukrainian, Michael. Thank you for your generosity, by the way. But apparently he said a bad word about Vance, or maybe about the whole situation under his breath. And Thomas Conservative writing, what about Chris Murphy? That would be the senator from Connecticut, you guys, the Democrat senator from Connecticut. You know what he did violates the Logan Act. He needs to be arrested. So what has come out is that Senator Murphy may have had some conversations ahead of time with Vladimir Zelensky to try and kind of steer him, help prep him in these negotiations. And I'll tell you this, whatever Murphy did, it was not a good idea. It was not a good idea because he goosed him up in a way that led to this catastrophe. Here's the thing. Zelensky had one job. It was to secure that mineral rights deal. That was the only thing he should have been trying to do. You don't need to go and do the bidding of your political Democrat friends. You shouldn't be doing that, because if you're working on behalf of the Ukrainian people, they need that deal. And so the only thing he needed to do was go in there and eat humble pie. And, if J.D. Vance said something he didn't like, he could have stared down at his shoes, but he didn't. He started fighting back. And I wonder about that, because the guy's an actor, okay? Like, he's an actor. Like, an actor ought to be able to keep it together and pretend at least, but he couldn't. So he's either enormously stupid, or he was pushed by Democrats to try and do something that would make it look like, oh, Donald Trump is just, right there in Putin's pocket. And so then if you looked at the airwaves and the aftermath, and still today, that's all I saw on MSNBC and CNN, and I'm not going to bore you with those sound bites, but just know it's out there. They're all saying, oh, well, he's just in Putin's pocket. That's all it is. I'm sorry, guys. You know what? This is a lot more complicated than that. Here's another excerpt from that Friday meeting.
Maybe he did. I don't know what happened, but he didn't break it with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think
Trump was livid. Like I've seen that or heard that tone in him before. That was totally genuine. That was totally real. And it did remind me in some ways of like Dad is coming home, and you had like the little kid who's sitting there and he's getting read the riot act by Dad, who's like, I'm tired of paying for your lifestyle. Right? I think he actually did that to Junior at one point, like early when Junior was young. He apparently was living a lifestyle that his dad did not approve of, and his dad was like, no. So you can see that same conversation, right, happening. And Zelensky's getting that message. And the other thing that came out of that, and I think that this is healthy, this is good. You get the UK saying we're going to commit $2 billion. Great. The Europeans are stepping up to the plate. This is Donald Trump saying, hey, it's about time.
We're committed to NATO, but NATO has to step up, and the Europeans have to step up more than they have. And I want to see them equalize, because they are in for far less than we're in, and they should be at least equal. You understand that? Why is the United States, we have an ocean in between, why is the United States in for so much more money and other things as Europe? With that being said, and as you said, they've also been obviously very helpful. But we have put in far more than they have. And I think they should equalize.
You can't be in a situation where the U.S. is the only game in town, right? There is this equalization that is needed, that is desired, because this is a lot of money we're talking about. I mean, and hey, they don't even know where all this money is. They don't know where it's all gone. We're going to get to that in a second because I think that this is important. I want to play you a soundbite of Zelensky admitting that he has no idea where it's gone. But before I do, think about this. I want to show you this map, guys. This is kind of an important one to look at because this is a map of sort of what Ukraine and what Europe actually, I should specifically Europe, looked like back in 1998 versus 2022. So, you know, during the end of the Cold War, there was this agreement that was struck. And the idea was, you know, you weren't going to keep encroaching on Russia. And yet somehow along the way, we just kept encroaching on Russia. So if you think about it in sort of simplistic terms, it would be like if suddenly the United States was dealing with China at its borders, right? China has actually played a role in Panama and some other locations there in South America. But I think that if you think about how this map has changed in such a short amount of time, you can be somewhat sympathetic to the situations that the White House, that the Kremlin is dealing with. I want to quote from you. This is actually the man, he's now deceased, George Kennan, who was the famous ambassador to the USSR during the Cold War. And he understood Russia very well, the USSR extremely well. And he wrote in a 1997 New York Times op-ed that expanding NATO, this is the direct quote, I actually tweeted this out, this is from my Twitter account, expanding NATO would be the most fateful error of American policy in the entire post-Cold War era. Such a decision may be expected to inflame the nationalistic, anti-Western, and militaristic tendencies in Russian opinion, to have an adverse effect on the development of Russian democracy, to restore the atmosphere of the Cold War to East-West relations, and to impel Russian foreign policy in directions decidedly not to our liking. So this is the guy who helped negotiate the peace deal, right? And forgive me, who oversaw, he did he did help negotiate the peace deal there with Russia, but he actually in the 1950s, like during the middle of the Cold War, was very, very involved, and he understood the Russian culture. So I think this is kind of a significant warning, but Hillary Clinton didn't take it, Dick Cheney didn't take it, no one took it, right? And instead we just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we're kind of in a situation where, again, this is not to sympathize with them, but to just say, listen, there's more sides to the story. It's what I've said all along. It's actually what JD said, that you need better diplomacy and that this was a missed opportunity. And because of that lack of diplomacy, we wound up in a situation where lives are being lost. And that's why Trump is like, no, this can't continue. I mean, lives are being lost, and of course, money is being lost. U.S. taxpayer dollars, they're being lost. He's upset about the $350 million. He's like, you weren't alone, Zelensky. We gave you $350 billion dollars. And so we want to make sure that if we're going to keep pouring in money, one, that as many people don't die, and two, that we get paid back, hence the mineral deal. Here's Zelensky talking in Ukrainian. You can see the translation, and I'll read it to you, about where the money is or is not going. They can't account for it.
Дивіться, я коли чую, і раніше чув, і сьогодні ми чуємо від Сполучених Штатів Америки, що Америка дала Україні сотні мільярдів.
And I'm giving this translation, if you would, for some of our Apple Podcast listeners. Thank you for listening on Apple Podcasts. He said the exact figure that was supported or voted on by Congress, he's saying a much lower number. He said, look, it was 177, but I tell you, we received just over 75 billion. And then he goes on, this is very interesting what he says here. He goes on to say, that is 100 billion of these 177 or 200, some people say we have never received. I'm like, well, wait, what? And he goes, and this is important because we're talking about specific things. And then he explains, because it's not just the weapons, right? And not just the money. We got 70 billion worth of it. He said there's the training, there's additional transport. There's not only the price for weapons. There's all this other stuff. All the extra, shall we say, humanitarian programs. There you go. Social programs. That's important. The humanitarian, the social programs, and hey, I don't know, the social media programs, whatever you guys are doing, one might say it is the biggest money laundering operation in recent history. And, I guess that's part of the benefit of war, right? Everybody's getting paid. I mean, the sad thing is you get actual people dying, and that's not right. And so if there is a diplomatic solution, if there's an economic solution, we should always be taking that route every single day, all day long. But consider, Zelensky's out there saying, well, we don't really know where all the money went because there's all these other things. Like it's the humanitarian effort. It's the social effort. It's the my wife's stylist effort. And gosh, my pajama clothes that I wear to the White House effort, right? I'm being facetious, but in all seriousness, Zelensky's wife has a stylist. Like somebody who picks out all the clothes and coordinates the clothes and gets paid to do that. I mean, a little weird, right? In a war-torn region. I found this article and I thought it was kind of interesting. I wanted to share it with you from the New York Times. This is in July of 2024. Why does the First Lady of a country at war need a stylist? My question, exactly. New York Times, we actually agree on something. And then they're writing, as Olena Zelensky accompanies her husband to Washington for the NATO summit, her stylist discusses the roles clothes play in the war effort. Interestingly, his wife was a film script writer. He was an actor. And of course, they have stylists. One of the things that came out in that article was that this particular stylist was hired because she needed someone just for herself. Apparently, he's got somebody else, right, who picks out those weird Star Trek outfits. I don't have one of my Star Trek outfits on today. No spacesuits, just an American flag. Anyway, why can't she just wear an American flag? Like, forgive me, a Ukraine flag, right? Like simple stuff, like whatever she wants to wear. I'm sure it's fine. Like, I'm sorry, lady. If you are a grown woman and you can't figure out what to wear when you come to Washington or to a NATO summit, then I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. Here's the quote from the article. The most important thing in this work, says the stylist, is that the clothes support her. When she has to address the U.S. Congress, we started to work with outside designers and prepare outfits. We wanted to use every detail to make her speech even stronger. I mean, this is kind of nauseating, right? Like, why am I reading this? Really and truly, why does the First Lady of a country at war need a stylist? Let's go right back to the question the New York Times asked in its headline. And they say, well, it's important. It's important with the image. I got to tell you, I'm a little over image. I think all of us are, right? The controlled imaging that we got out of the White House for the last 4 years is something that we're all still suffering with PTSD from, and we appreciate the authenticity. I mean, that was the interesting part about this meeting with Zelensky, all 40 minutes of it. And that's when it got interesting. The first 40 minutes were very interesting too, right? Like that's when they were in this negotiation. It seemed like everything was going to go okay. And then 40 minutes in, all HELL breaks loose. And we got to see that, right? Again, thinking about the transparency and how everything doesn't need to be so tied up with a nice little bow. This is a very different kind of crowd. So I would just say, you know what? Olena Zelensky, if you can't dress yourself at this age, and you are in a war-torn region, I really don't think that we should be paying, and it's we, by the way, for your stylist, okay? Like, that is not acceptable. That is not okay, right? It is good to see you guys. Independence, free thinking. People need to start getting charged and arrested for treason, starting with Chuck Schumer, ASAP. I wonder what's going to happen. Again, this is what I'm hearing through sources, that he was effectively sort of goosed to go in there and primed to go in there. And folks like Chris Murphy or others connected with the Biden administration, Obama administration, were trying to help him along. Well, they definitely didn't help him, That was not helpful at all. I mean, maybe it was helpful to them because then they could get out and parrot some narrative that, oh, Donald Trump only cares about Putin. No, he actually cares about getting something done. His point was, I don't know, whether Putin will do a deal or not, but like, hey guys, like, let's try, right? Let's give it a shot. Should we not? I mean, and then you get Zelensky with his wife. They've got every incentive in the world, sadly, to kind of keep this going from a financial perspective. And I don't want to be too harsh and too tough about that. But I would say that that's kind of an important thing to think about right now, right? The motivations of some of these people. We're getting some breaking news into us right now, which I think is relevant in light of all that's happening here with AOC expected to be sued. We're now hearing that a top FBI agent has been forced out in a clash with the Justice Department. So again, this news just coming in. His name is James Dennehy. Let me see if I can get this in a shall we say lower third here up on the screen for you. But this just breaking right now. We have learned that top New York City FBI agent forced out after clash with Justice Department. And that would be one Pam Bondi, right? Unless this is actually, let's see, unless it was a state case. So this is James Dennehy, it's per the New York Times, had told agents to dig in the face of the Trump administration's culling of officials who had investigated the January 6th attack. And he is now apparently out of his job. The Justice Department follows clashes with Justice Department officials over Trump administration directives. So again, this news just coming in right now. This is an administration, as I have told you all along, that is not messing around. They are not going to stand for people that are in the way of them seeking their policies and getting their policies through. And so if you're in the New York field office and you're putzing around and not willing, say, to turn over the Epstein files to one Pam Bondi, you're going to be out of a job. So this is, again, just coming into us right now. We're learning that James Dennehy, this FBI agent, is now out of his position, and it's because of his clash there with none other than the Justice Department's there at the United States government. In other words, you are a federal employee. And so what I've been astonished by is sort of this setup for, if you would, a kind of civil war that seems to be happening in the intelligence divisions. So if you have, say, Kash Patel coming in and saying, I want this, that, and the other, and Pam Bondi at DOJ saying, I want this, that, and the other, how can you have somebody in the New York field office saying, I'm just not going to do it? This gets us back to what happened last week. And I know a lot of us are very frustrated that Pam was not able to deliver more. But you know what? This shows that someone's on it there because they're forcing this guy out because he wasn't willing to play ball. And so this is what they're going to have to do. Listen, this is what a good CEO does. When a new CEO comes in, if you have a contingency of people that are not on the same page and don't want to take the company in the same direction that you want to go in, then guess what? It's time to clean house. So you come in, you're head of the FBI, you're Kash Patel, and you know what? You want certain things, you have an expectation of certain things, and you've got one of your top field officers there at the FBI there in New York saying, well, I'm not going to do this. Well, guess what? It's game over. It's game over. You're not going to actually be able to do that. You are going to be out of a job. And so, again, this news, we're just getting this in right now, just breaking. And I wanted to bring it to you because this is rather significant. So they're making changes, and I think that perhaps we should be somewhat patient. I know. We're all like, wait a second, what was that? What happened with those Epstein documents? She went on television, said there was going to be something, and then she only had 200 pages. She brought the influencers in. The influencers were like, why did I come all the way here? Right? For this? For that? What is it? And then the rollout was weird because they didn't actually incorporate everybody else. Anna Paulina Luna, who's the representative from Florida, for example, wasn't given a heads up. So the New York Post had the story before Anna Paulina Luna did, which was really, really, really weird. And they had the documents before she did. So I think there were some things that they got wrong, but keep in mind, it's only been a month and change. And this is an important move. So they're getting rid of the guy who was a big deal in the FBI office in New York that was in the way. And so maybe this means we might get a little bit more. Pam was told there were thousands of pages of documents related to Epstein. You know, my fear is that a lot of critical evidence may have been destroyed. I've explained that to you in the past, and I still remain very concerned about that. But if there is anything that they got and they're not turning over, then guess what? Heads should roll. And this is what she made very, very clear. In fact, in a little bit of a CYA letter, right, to Kash Patel saying, hey, we were surprised that we didn't have a little bit more here. And so we expect more, we're demanding more. And if it's not turned over to me by February 28th at 8 a.m., if it's not on my desk, then you need to inform your personnel. And basically there should be consequences paid. So this may be one of the fallouts here with this Dennehy losing his job in the New York field office for the FBI because he's not playing ball. So this is a sign, again, of force. It goes back to everything we're talking about, whether it be AOC that they're taking down or Ilhan Omar, whether it be Letitia James, or whether it be the FBI, which is a federal agency. If you're not on board with the new president of the United States, then guess what? You really shouldn't be in the FBI, right? We can't be dealing with these holdouts and these intel rogue agents that are causing problems. So very, very big move there. Very good to see. We're going to have more reporting on this. But first, we were just talking about Zelensky and all the money they're spending. And, you know, the wife with the stylist. I mean, speaking of stylists, did you see anything from the Oscars last night? Anything from the Academy Awards? I think that Whoopi Goldberg has really, 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 what's the expression? Jumped the shark. And forget about that Disney movie. Like, it's just not happening. It's so not happening. Before we get to that, just a reminder that one of our sponsors is Balance in Nature. We love these guys. I love these guys. I have been sick. And you know what? I'm doubling down on my Balance in Nature. I've been doing really well. Like, I never, I actually always get sick. I was going to say this year is the first time I've never not gotten sick until now. So I was doing well. Like, I knew I was tempting fate because I kept saying it every day. Oh my gosh, maybe it's because I'm finally taking vitamins for the first time in my life since I was 10 years old. I am taking them, Balance of Nature, and I do credit them with a lot because the kids have been sick a lot this year, and I have just gotten sick once. So you may still hear some of it in my voice, of course. That's all right, right? You know, at least I'm not singing opera. Balanceofnature.com. Go there, use my code word because you can get 35% off. That's a big deal. 35% off, you guys. And that is with, by the way, a full money back guarantee. So no harm, no foul. No harm, no foul. I want to bring you more on this James Dennehy story, but I do want to just attribute how much I credit them with my health and success this year, other than this small little gold. The FBI story we will get to, but again, balanceofnature.com. Use code word Trish, and again, 35% off plus free shipping, money back guarantee, all very, very good stuff. This is really, truly amazing though. Top FBI official forced out. This is a big deal, okay? So he is forced out because guess what? Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, they're not putting up with any of this. They're not going to put up with AOC. They're not going to put up with Ilhan Omar. They're not going to put up with rogue agents at the FBI in New York. A top FBI agent, one James Dennehy, out after criticizing Trump's pursuit of agents who investigated January 6th. Wow. This is massive, okay? This is actually massive because it shows that they're not willing to tolerate people who are against the boss. And they can say, my freedom of speech, whatever. I'm sorry. You know what? You work for the FBI, you work for the president. It's a federal agency. So again, his name is James Dennehy. James Dennehy out at the New York FBI field office 1 month after he urged colleagues to, quote, dig in after the new administration requested the names of all agents who worked on the Capitol riot cases. Now, Donald Trump is saying, hey, I need to clean house. I need to know that this team in the White House is actually on my side. They were on Obama's side. They were on Biden's side. When I came in for 4 years, they were definitely not on my side. I mean, look what happened with James Comey. James Comey, who was planting honeypots every which way to Sunday. I talked to George Papadopoulos last week. He was the victim of 3 separate plots, one of which was on the Ben Carson campaign, one of which was on the Trump campaign. So his point was, hey, you know what? It wasn't just Trump that they were after as far back as 2015. They were after other people that were top contenders within the GOP. And this was allegedly, per the Washington Times, an op that was run personally off the books by one James Comey. So James Comey's being investigated for that, all while the head of the FBI New York field office was forced out of the bureau. This just happened today, a month again after he urged employees to ignore what Trump had requested. He wanted to know the names of the people that had worked on the J6 cases. This is according to various sources. This just breaking, as I said, in both the New York Times, NBC has this story as well. He was somebody who was, according to the sources over at NBC, a highly respected FBI leader, also a former Marine. He was given a choice to resign or to be fired. And this is a result, really, of just sort of the mutiny that you saw going on and the tension that you have going on. In this case, it's related to him digging in on the J6 employees. But keep in mind, Pam Bondi had asked that FBI field office in New York for all the Epstein files that they had. She had been told there were thousands of pages, they had thousands of conversations, they had videotape, etc. She was anticipating quite a bit of stuff. And what did she get? 200 pages. And we were all upset about it. We're all saying, what the heck is going on? Like, why the big wind up and then all you got is that? And she said, hey, you know what? This is on the FBI and this is on the FBI's employees. They did not deliver as they should have. And as a result, she said to Kash Patel, I think you need to get your people in line and the head should roll in some 14 days. She said, if I don't get what I need by 8 a.m. on Friday, February 28th. We're here on Monday, and look at this. The head of the New York field office is out, is gone. So this is a very big deal, and it shows you that it is a new team, it is a new game, and there's a new sheriff in town, one Donald Trump, who's not going to mess around with the likes of people that are doing stupid stuff that, you know, and it's not even stupid stuff. I would say it's just wrong. Like, you know, you work for the president. It's like, again, having a boss, having a CEO of a company. You cannot have these rogue divisions that totally disagree with everything he's doing. I mean, that just sets you up as a president and as a country for failure. And so their goal is to get rid of this so-called deep state. And they've got their work cut out for them, don't they? But it starts with letting heads roll. And this is stuff that they're willing, able, and quite able to do, of course. Again, James Dennehy getting the message, you're either fired or you can resign. And he apparently chose to step down, being forced out there because he was not in line with this administration. And the left is going to flip out and they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is tyranny, this is this, that, and the other. And I'm just going to say, no, like, you know, in what company do you work for where you can just completely defy the boss's orders? Like, I'm sorry, like that can't happen, because we can't actually really function as a united country in that way, because the person that we Americans put in charge is not really running the show. Wow. Okay, big news. But as I said, there was also some big news in Hollywood. Whoopi Goldberg really got embarrassed, I'm going to say, at the Oscars last night. I mean, I look at what she was wearing. I think she's just a total disaster. Some people may disagree with me, but I'm sorry. How do you look at that and think that it's a good thing? So she and Oprah Winfrey got on stage last night to present one of the awards. Of course, it's an ABC show. And that's kind of interesting, I guess, because it's an ABC show and she works for ABC, The View, Disney, etc. And they may have been, in my estimation, in the midst of some contract negotiations. Remember, she wasn't showing up on that weekend show. And I said, maybe it has something to do with her negotiations, and she was being really, really quiet on the show. And then suddenly she shows up as a presenter at the Oscars. So I'm guessing that maybe she wanted that. You had two people out there, one, of course, who absolutely hates Trump, the other who likely hates Trump, Oprah Winfrey, trying to dress, I guess, like a man. What is the point of that? A tuxedo. Lovely. Oprah Winfrey, who finally has been able to lose her weight, apparently, and by the way, this is not apparently, I believe she has said this, thanks to a little extra help from stuff like Ozempic. She's out there in a tuxedo. You've got Whoopi Goldberg in some kind of weird prom gown of sorts, presenting these awards. I mean, I just think it's actually somewhat embarrassing. But remember, these are two people that despise Trump as well. And while Whoopi tells us every day, the other one, Oprah Winfrey, pockets a reported $2 million, according to the New York Times, for doing a sit-down interview with one Kamala Harris that, by the way, I guarantee you didn't even do as well as some of our live shows like we're doing right now on YouTube. It's like $2 million, really, to interview Kamala Harris. That was unbelievable. So, it's like everything keeps coming back for some reason to Disney and ABC. I mean, ABC News and the role that they played in all of this was massive. And so now they're sitting there and they're looking around. They get to see, oh my gosh, the head of the field office in New York City just got thrown out. They know that Trump is cutting off all the money for New York State, which is freaking out Kathy Hochul and it's freaking out Letitia James. I mean, what are they going to do, right? Things are really changing. And so this issue of what side are you on, AOC making it really, really clear she's on the side, apparently, of the criminals. Those are her constituents. She says she has to defend them. Letitia James saying the same thing. And Whoopi Goldberg actually saying something different. Is this the price she had to pay in order to get the gig alongside Oprah presenting on ABC at the Academy Awards? Did her bosses say, I think they did, hey, you got to tone it down? And she said, yeah, well, I'll tone it down and you give me a deal where I can present. Here she is actually seemingly sounding kind of MAGA, if you ask me, saying that, yeah, nobody wants criminals. Nobody wants the 650,000 criminals that are allegedly in this country for things like homicide and assault. Nobody wants them. Oh, you're wrong. Apparently AOC. Of course, she didn't get the deal to present. All right, that went to Whoopi, who suddenly is acting rather contrite, don't you think? I mean, she's been so quiet. She does go after Elon Musk, but she has stopped going after Donald Trump. I mean, this is the woman that was spitting every time she said his name. Very interesting. She did make a fool of herself, though, in that dress. I'm just going to say, can I be catty for a second? Total disaster. I'm going to be catty because, hey, why not? Look at this. I mean, she's up there. Well, first of all, there was Cynthia Erivo. That was the woman from Wicked. And I say this as a trained opera singer. Ariana Grande did a pretty good job. I mean, I don't like her much, and she looks like you could literally blow her over. She's like 60 pounds now. She's gotten so tiny. But this Cynthia woman, I didn't like the voice. I didn't like the act. I didn't like anything. But I'm kind of looking at Whoopi. And I'm comparing and contrasting and wondering if there was something going on. Like, was she trying to upstage Cynthia? What was Cynthia wearing? Can anybody tell me? I mean, that is some getup. I like Louis Vuitton. That's a Louis Vuitton dress. What has happened, right? Where like somehow this is the standard. This is what you want to be wearing. I'm trying to see. This is just Whoopi. I don't know who designed her dress, but it looks like some kind of bad Louis Vuitton knockoff. I mean, just atrocious. Some of the things that I saw really just blew me away. The clothing is out of control. These people are out of control. Here's another one. Okay, so here's Ariana Grande, the one I said you could just blow away. What was that? Like she's apparently going full on. We got Glinda and we got the Wicked Witch. They're really embracing their characters on the red carpet. I mean, the dress is larger than Ariana, right? Like that's just whatever. You know what? To each his own. But I think it's kind of amazing because we live in this upside down world where everything like that seems bad is somehow, according to the press, good. Whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's, maybe we shouldn't have boys competing against girls in women's sports, but no, you can't say that. That's bad, right? Because it's supposed to be good, even though we're supposed to be all for women and Title IX was created for a reason. I bring this up because you look at the AP reaction to the outfit that one Cynthia Erivo wore. Okay, Cynthia Erivo looks like an absolute clown. Like she'd scare you to death. But AP is like all over it. They love it. They're like, oh, this is just amazing. She's really decked out. I mean, I'm sorry. Are we just not looking at the same woman? Can we go? I see what I see. You see what you see, right? It's like the emperor has no clothes on steroids. And then you get this one, the People magazine. They're all over this too. They think it's just great. They said somehow managing to top their already gorgeous red carpet gowns. Like the whole standard of beauty is apparently changing, and yet it's not, because I'm telling you, like, people aren't that complicated. They're not going to look at that Cynthia Erivo dress by Louis Vuitton and think that that is as stunning as AP does, making Alphaba proud, unless there's some kind of hidden meeting. Did you think about that one, guys? Maybe there's a hidden meeting. In other words, she was the Wicked Witch, and she's making the Wicked Witch proud. I don't know. I mean, you guys agree with me, right? Ariana just looks way too skinny. It looks way unhealthy. It's not good. Mr. Know-It-All, thank you so much for your generosity. Much appreciated, much appreciated. But it's like, I'm sort of blown away by how it's Empress Has No Clothes, in that like somehow they all love it. And I'm looking at it going, this is not either healthy nor attractive. They look weird. And then there was this other moment. All right, so long as we're on the Oscars. It only happens once a year. I didn't actually watch it. And you know what? I saw the clips, and this is one of the clips I have to show you, but I didn't actually watch the movies that were nominated. I mean, eventually I'll get around to it, maybe when they come out on not DVD. I'm dating myself. On Apple. Maybe I'll get around to it. But wow, the Snow White actresses, they really, 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 really hate each other. That was apparent. So I went back and I watched some clips, and I'm like looking at this. Look at this, guys. I can't actually show you the full video because there's like copyright rules, but I'm just showing you some clips from it. I looked at this with like an eagle eye. This is one Rachel Zegler and one Gal Gadot, and they never actually looked at each other the entire time. They never even glanced at each other. Now, this is a little bit odd, and I can say this as somebody who's co-hosted many shows with other hosts. Like, that's the biggest diss you can do to someone, not look at them. Like, that's only happened a couple times in my career, and it's because, there's some jealous person that doesn't want to actually, it's just like something else is going on. You always look at your co-host. You don't get up and hand out an award like this without like maybe sort of like looking over, and you kind of cheat it because they're both there on stage together, so you don't fully look over because then the audience can't see you, but there's a way of sort of cheating it and like looking pleasantly and having a nice little smile. But these two women, like, they just stared at the camera, they stared at the prompter, they never looked at each other. And it was really obvious that they could not stand each other. They really hate each other. They're probably very happy this movie is done. I don't know how they're going to make it through all the press. But again, remember, this is an ABC production. ABC is owned by Disney, so of course they were there. And I would say that, this is clear they don't like each other. And maybe it's just pure jealousy. I don't know. Viewers certainly noticed. I mean, this is this was funny to me because leave it to the Irish Star to come up with exactly what I said. I was saying this morning, guys, they really can't stand each other. And this is exactly what the headline was. Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, quote, didn't even look at each other while presenting at Oscars amid feud. Why are they feuding? Well, they're feuding in part because of Israel, in part because of Trump, and we'll get to that. And they may even be feuding in part because one is clearly by far a much bigger star than the other. I mean, Rachel Zegler, can we go back to that picture for a second? I want you to see this because she actually looks like she could have played one of the dwarfs. Look at her. I mean, like she's just a tiny little thing, like a little gnat in Gal Gadot's way. So she's this tiny little thing. I guarantee you that, they're actresses. Rachel doesn't like being the short little one that is not as attractive. I mean, you've got the whole internet posting memes like this. They're like, oh, check it out. The internet responds to seeing Snow White actresses on stage together with a new show poster meme. I mean, nobody could quite understand why the beautiful Snow White was actually being played by Rachel Zegler to begin with, right? I mean, and Gal Gadot, like, mirror, mirror on the wall, I'm sorry, like, there's one that's winning that game, and I say this as a woman, okay? Like, there is one that is clearly leagues ahead of the other. So that makes the whole story kind of implausible to begin with. But the viewers kind of, on television, they were sort of picking up on this vibe. And they noticed that they couldn't stand each other. They noticed that it was really kind of a weird power play. Funny comments like, quote, why are they punishing Angel, this is somebody who likes Rachel Zegler, by making her constantly show up with Gal Gadot? And then somebody else writes, Zegler deserves an Oscar just for her performance of pretending to like Gal Gadot. Oh, I'm sorry. She did not do a very good job pretending that she liked Gal Gadot. Others were saying she should just push Gal Gadot off the stage. So this is clearly the Rachel camp talking. Remember now, Rachel has been very outspoken in favor of they, them, in favor of pronouns. It's still all over her Twitter account. She got somebody else fired. Remember that? The woman who had played in some of those action films for Disney, she got fired because she wasn't willing to put her pronouns on her page, and like Rachel went nuts. She's gone nuts on a few things, and they've had to kind of temper her down, little elf or dwarf that she is. Here we go. Rachel Zegler, the ingenue from New Jersey, writes, after saying everybody should go watch the preview for the Snow White movie, and always remember Free Palestine. Now, this was happening shortly after October 7th. Gal Gadot, who's from Israel and is a former member of the IDF, obviously feels very differently. But Rachel had no sensitivity to that whatsoever. Like, the sensitivity chip gone. Like, she's just like all these liberals that you see that are out there like total nut jobs, preaching their view to the choir, to themselves. I say to the choir because it's to themselves. It's to nobody else. And they're really loud and they're really, really, really angry. Thomas Conservative, I'm going to get to your comment in just a second. Thank you again for the generosity. Here's what she said on her Instagram account. Rachel Zegler said, I echo so-and-so Ethel Kane's statement more than anything. Quote, may Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace. That's Disney's star Hollywood actress. All right, so you wonder where, say, Whoopi gets it from on The View. You wonder where the debate team at ABC News gets it, or George Stephanopoulos feels like it doesn't matter. I can say whatever I want about this guy. I can libel him, and there's nothing that's going to happen. Of course, in his case, he actually cost his network $16 million. But this is the sentiment. So Disney's main star writing before the election made Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace. And between that and Israel, like, I'm just thinking that this movie's not going to do so well. I think a lot of people are going to say, you know what? I have better things to do with my time. I have better things to do with my money. I don't need to support an actress like that. And we haven't even talked about what she thinks of the film itself, right? one Rachel Zegler here talking about Snow White. You remember this clip. Love doesn't matter. No, she's going to be like head of the company or president of the kingdom. Well, it is Hollywood, baby, which means Hollywood is not in sync with the rest of the country, and thus the rest of the country may just say, hey, baby, we don't need to go see your movie. We're not going to spend money on your movie. I would not be surprised to see that happen. I actually think that this could be a huge flop. On the heels, shall we say, of Captain America, which you guys, I told you, that movie's getting killed. Because if you look at its carry-on, like it did terribly the Thursday night it debuted, and it did okay over the weekend, and then it just tanked. It just tanked. Hey, thank you for noting the volume, Jason Pogo 1313. I know sometimes those clips, there's not much I can... Wait, are you hearing me? Let me see. Yeah, you can hear me. You know what? You're right. That's my fault. Do you want to see it again? Should we play it again with some volume up? Let's try it.
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Okay, so that was worth hearing, right? Thank you for your comments and for alerting me to that. Cat Crazy writing, oh, no sound on her, but that's fine, right? Because maybe you didn't want to even hear Rachel Zegler with her annoying voice and annoying commentary after all. But it's important to understand where they're coming from. And I think that a lot of this Disney wokeness is actually being dismantled in real time. In fact, just look at the company itself, which just got rid of its 2 DEI programs, right? It's 2 signature DEI programs they're getting rid of because shareholders are like, wait a second, I'm sorry, Bob Iger, CEO, your company kind of sucks. Look at the stock price and look what it's done or what it hasn't done within the last 5 years. It's not going anywhere. Actually, if you look at it compared to 2020, it's somewhere around half what it was. So listen, I mean, they've got serious problems. I don't think anybody's going to actually go see that show. I really don't. Tom's conservative. Gal Gadot, he writes, doesn't just dwarf Rachel Z in height, but as a person, the only thing more beautiful than Gal Gadot, is her soul. She's such a beautiful actress, right? She's just a beautiful actress and such a good representative, I think, for Israel. But the other one, you know what? I may stay home on that movie. I see no reason to bring the kids to that, shall we say, because you're just reinforcing these crazy woke values. And it's not cool. It's not cool. They're taking all these classics and they're remaking them in their wokeness to try and reinvent history. And I'm sorry, enough already, which brings me to something that's kind of important to me. This year, I began a partnership with Herzog Foundation, which is a wonderful organization that's all about making sure that our kids are able to understand and know the values that will make them better people, better Americans, better leaders, and happier, frankly. I mean, look at all these miserable liberals. I mean, it kind of goes with the territory, right? They're all miserable. And, you think about what's being taught in school, you think about what Disney's doing with its programs, and none of it's good. But this is where Herzog comes in. So they're all about Christian education. I'm a big believer. If you have that opportunity for a Christian education, take it. But I know it can be overwhelming. It's like, where do I go to what do I do? They're there to help. So they're a foundation that was put together to help parents with kids or grandparents or, hey, it could be a niece or nephew. If you're interested in Christian education, they want to be able to help direct you. So they have the resources. They have a podcast actually that's devoted to this. They have a magazine or online newsletter, I should say, that's devoted to it as well. The Lion. Check them out, Herzog Foundation. Sign up for all of it. It's just free. And if you're interested in Christian education, I think it could really, really help guide you and at least familiarize you with the benefits of it as well as the resources in your community for using it. So I'm really happy about that partnership that I have established established with them. You know what else I'm happy about, and that's that we have beaten the S&P yet again over at 76 Research. So that is some good news indeed. You can get the 76 Research. Get the 76 report, sign up for it with code word $. It's just $1 for the first 2 months. And I just can't stress that enough because there's a lot going on, right? A lot of dynamics within this economy right now. Of course, as you know, we're getting the 25% tariffs starting tomorrow. The market did sell off on that news. I actually went in and, full disclosure, bought a little bit more because those sell-offs are often for me anyway, I look at as opportunities. But, you kind of need to know what to buy and what you're doing. And that's where hopefully we can come in and the research can come in there at 76 Research. We do have a whole bunch of stocks in our model portfolios. There's like 10 to 15 in each one. And they're worth taking a look at there because it can help really, steer you in the right way. Again, knowing that the market itself had a loss of 1.5%, and yet we're beating that S&P because we're in positive territory. Solera Knight asking, what do I think? The war for rare earth minerals has begun. Do I think AI cryptocurrency world where we should recycle instead of endless landfills? Look, I think that rare earth minerals are still going to be relevant. I mean, no matter what. In fact, I invest in copper. I think that there's a reason that Donald Trump wants that opportunity, but simultaneously, you've also got a situation where the world is changing, and yes, AI and cryptos are all going to have a bigger role. Okay, we get some more breaking news. My gosh, I was just about to get off the air with you, but I cannot because we have just learned, not only is the top FBI agent out in New York, but this is a big one, you guys. We have just learned, breaking news, Donald Trump has stopped all federal funding to Ukraine. I mean, wow. All federal war funding to Ukraine. So this is exactly what should not have happened for Zelensky. This is very bad news for Zelensky. This just crossing this moment, we have learned that the President of the United States is pausing aid after that fiery meeting, of course, with Zelensky on Friday. And it did not help. It did not help one bit that Zelensky then went out and did an interview with the Associated Press, and the headline that came out of that interview was that he thinks the war is going to go on for a very, very long time. That may have also contributed. I suspect, he did get kicked out of the White House. There was an opportunity maybe for him to apologize, even through back channels. He didn't take it. Instead, he kind of seemed to double down on this bravado, and Trump's not having it. He's just not having it. Look at this.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the war cannot go on that long if the United States is not involved. Let me just be the realist here. Or we can let Trump be the realist. I think he tried to express this to him just the other day there on Friday.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are saying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, it would have been over. So now he's taken away the military equipment, or at least any promise of any new military equipment. Gus Schmidt, thank you for the generosity and the compliment. and the compliment. I will never turn down a compliment. Apparently, Gus likes my sentiment here, saying Trish is becoming one of the greatest of all time. Thank you so much. But again, the news just coming to us at this moment. Look, it keeps happening. I mean, the benefit, I guess, of being on air right now in live time is that we are getting all of this news to you right away. And as Zelensky says, the war will not end soon, Donald Trump fires back with, yeah, well, guess what? We're not going to give you any more money. So again, the headline being at this hour that Donald Trump is cutting off the funds for one Vladimir Zelensky. And I don't know how this progresses for them. I mean, granted, you did have the UK coming out there just the other day, right? And they said they were going to move forward with $2 billion in funding. But Trump is saying, look, no, the administration is pausing all aid to Ukraine, including weapons in transit, to Poland right now. So that's pretty massive. That's pretty significant. And again, I just want to, it's not just, the employing of the stylist, if you would, you can see that, that we're reading here on the screen where, we've questioned some of the funding that Donald Trump is worried about. It's not just that, it's that Zelensky doesn't seem to be willing to find a resolution to stopping the fighting. And that's what came out of the AP today. So Trump is pausing all aid to Ukraine. And that is the headline at this hour. With weapons that are in transit at this moment in Poland, and it comes on the heels of that disastrous meeting that we saw, of course, on Friday, where even just when Zelensky walked up to him and you heard Trump say, oh, you're really dressed up today, commenting on the fact that, he wasn't wearing a suit yet again, he didn't seem to appreciate this. And it's understandable, actually, at this moment in time that given his positions he's run on, given where he was, that he does not want to keep forking over billions of dollars for this thing. So this is rather fascinating. Again, they'll come back and they'll sue him on this one too. Letitia James, gee, that's really going to look good for you in New York, right? You're going to sue him because he's stopping funding for Ukraine. Again, it's going to come down to, does Congress want to intervene? And Congress won't. Like, look, again, he got every single pick. He's got the whole House. He's got the whole Senate. And he's not really that stoppable at this point in time. So if he wants to pause all aid to Ukraine, then guess what? He's going to do it, and he's going to ask questions later. So this is a massive development at this moment. We kind of anticipated this coming. Zelensky just shooting himself in the foot. I mean, it's like, buddy, what were you thinking? What were you thinking on Friday when you went in and you decided to take issue with none other than J.D. Vance, right? That was really something to see, because J.D. was just making the point. And look, it got a little bit contentious. I'll give you that. Like, J.D. was kind of over it with little Vlad. And he's like, you know what? This could have been dealt with. It should have been dealt with much, much better before. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And because of that, you know what? We have had to come up and try and fix all this in real time. The vice president saying to Zelensky, do you really think it's respectful? Do you think it's respectful that you came into the Oval Office and started to attack the administration that is here trying to help you? And let's take a look at Zelensky's response. This did not go over well.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
You
God
don't-
bless.
you don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel
I'm-
very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You don't
was
have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not
cards.
playing
But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
what do you
You're
think about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
I'm wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you.
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for
What-
the United
what
States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Trying to save your country. And there is sort of no respect there. But you know what? We don't even need respect. You know, we just need people that are willing. I'm going to say that, all right? Like, we need people that are willing to actually see this through and find a solution. And if you're not willing to do that, then I kind of think, you know what? Zelensky, you may be out of a job. Like, this may not actually fly for you. I don't know if your people are going to actually want to continue supporting you in light of the fact that you could not get Donald Trump to come forward with additional aid because you wouldn't sign that minerals deal. You know what's fascinating is he left there, total disaster, right? Very fiery meeting. And he's like, oh, you know, I just wanted some respect for Ukraine. And then you saw him go hand in hand to the Europeans. UK said that they'd come forward with $2 billion. Great. But they also made it very clear over the weekend that they would also insist that the US was somewhat, in some way, shape, or form, involved, right? So I don't think he's getting the $2 billion out of Ukraine without some kind of commitment from the US. And at this point in time, he just doesn't have it. Again, if you're just tuning in, breaking developments right now, we have just learned that Donald Trump is pausing all aid to Ukraine after that fiery meeting. And after we heard from Zelensky himself in an interview with the Associated Press saying that he does not think this war would end anytime soon. It actually caused a little bit of a sell-off in the crypto market. And of course, the tariffs probably added into the sell-off that you saw in the market later today, this afternoon. S&P 500 trading down, Dow, similar story there on the NASDAQ. Remember to go to 76research.com. Don't forget, I told you so, right? So this is a massive development. I want to say something like, this has been a failure of diplomacy on every level. And you know what? You have only to look at this map. If you go back to 1998 and you compare and contrast it with 2022, we have been increasingly, with NATO, encroaching on Russia, and Russia doesn't like it. Now, I'm not an apologist for them. I'm not saying that, you know, we have to completely change how we're doing things, but I think that you have to actually take this into consideration. Back in 2014, we actually put a team in place. The New York Times did some 30, 40-page PDF file on this one. They wrote a big story last summer talking about how we put this initiative into Ukraine. And at the time, we didn't trust them. We just didn't trust Ukraine. We didn't feel that they could be trusted. They lied to us all the time. And the idea was, you know, can we sort of just kind of feel this out and see where it's going? And you fast forward 10 years from that and look at this. Look at where we are. I mean, this is just atrocious. This is the quote that I put out over the weekend because I think it's important. This is from George Kennan. He was the Cold War ambassador to Russia. He helped basically thaw that whole situation, right? And he knew that NATO was a ticking time bomb if it got too big, because he said, and I quote, expanding NATO would be the most fateful era of American policy in the entire post-Cold War era. Such a decision may be expected to inflame the nationalistic, anti-Western, and militaristic tendencies in Russian opinion, to have an adverse effect on the development of Russian democracy, to restore the atmosphere of the Cold War to East-West relations, and to impel Russian foreign policy in directions decidedly not to our liking. So I think Donald Trump's coming in and he's saying, okay, we need to reassess. And we got this, Spitfire Zelensky there who can't even tell us where the money's going. Zelensky, who wants to fight with J.D. Vance in the Oval Office, doesn't quite seem to understand what's at stake. And in Donald Trump's view, absolutely, quote, gambling with World War III. And that's why he's so angry. Because he's like, knock it off. Like, we got to be able to find a better situation, a better solution to this challenge. And so I suspect this now puts Zelensky in a really, really tough spot where he's going to have to come back and eat crow. I think he will, because I don't think he can do this, as Donald Trump said, without the help of the United States. And so I get that, there's going to be all those lefties out there that flip out, and somehow this is just another example in their view of why Donald Trump can't be trusted, and, somehow you're supposed to love Putin. Here's an interesting sort of factoid for you. Do you remember when, George Bush was trying to at least have some kind of relationship? I was actually covering the Kennebunkport Lobster Summit in Maine. That was a lot of years ago, right? Maybe like 2007, when Putin was there in Kennebunkport and they, sat down and had some lobster together. I actually grew up, summers, lucky kid that I was, in Kennebunkport. And so it was fun for me to go back. I was like, wow, this place is really nice, right? Anyway, he had Putin there, and they spoke, and they seemed to have this thawing in the relationship. Of course, that maybe started after 9/11, because after 9/11, the first phone call that Bush got was actually from Vladimir Putin, who wanted to express his condolences. And Bush at the time said he very much appreciated that, and he trusted him, and he kind of thought that things were changing. But, you've got this Vladimir Putin who was out there not shortly after going and having this dust up at the White House, going on Fox and telling Bret Baier that there was no way he was going to apologize. It's like, buddy, what are you doing?
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President, and I respect American people. And if, I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing. Yes, we are partners. We are very close partners. We have to be fair. We have to be very free.
Well, that was a missed opportunity. I mean, if he were smart, he would have gone on Fox and said, gee, I really screwed up. I feel really bad. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand, but, I so respect the United States and everything that they've done for us, and I hope that we can work forward towards a solution here. And I want this war to end too, but he never indicated that he wanted the war to end. And I think that's where Donald Trump is saying, hey, if we're not on the same page with that basic thing, if you're not going to agree to a ceasefire, if you're not willing to give a ceasefire a chance, if you're not willing to give us then we don't want the minerals, right? We're not going to do that deal, because you are not putting your best foot forward in this deal arrangement. So this is where I think a little bit of entrepreneurship is coming into play, and the fact that we have a business leader in the White House is actually paying off in spades. So the money's gone. So what does Zelensky do now? The ball is in his court. Everybody's going to be trying to bring Donald Trump back to the table. But Trump's like, I'm out. I'm out. We don't have to do this. I don't want to do this. And I'm calling it off. So massive news right now. What's this going to do for gold? Gold's probably going to go up. Take a look there. This is one of our great sponsors here on the show. Let me see if I can move some of these lower thirds so that you can actually see their name here. We thank them. We appreciate all they do to make this show come to you for free every single day. As I said, Trump pausing all of this aid to Ukraine, it will likely have an effect on gold prices. Listen, I don't believe in just buying and selling things, so I'm not telling anybody to make a quick profit on anything. I really don't. I actually have been telling you to buy gold like forever. I've been actually saying that for 20 years. My mom thanks me for that, just because it's something that helps diversify your portfolio and helps keep up with inflation. So it's one of those things that you want long term. It's something that I actually never sell because I look at it and say, hey, you know what? It's been around for thousands of years. I don't want to actually lose my gold. And anytime it goes below $2,800 an ounce, I try and get a little bit more. Anyway, you can get free silver as well. Silver often can work in tandem, not always with gold, but it's one of those precious commodities that actually can be used as well. So there's some usefulness to it in terms of building, et cetera. And you can get $15,000 worth of free silver with specific offers and opportunities at American Hartford Gold. So text Trish, my name, to 65532 for more information on that. And again, 76 Research, I'm going to tell you that over and over and over and over again. I know you keep hearing it and I sound like a broken record, but listen, I think in the end you'll thank me, right? And I created this company for you guys for a reason, because I want everybody to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be coming our way. Thank you so much. I know it was a longer show today. Don Baca telling me he's short Bitcoin. Oh no, Don. I actually like Bitcoin. I do. And in fact, when it went down today and when it went down over the weekend, I got some more. So I'm willing, though, by the way, to have, those kind of ups and downs and deal with those swings in the market. That's, I have time on my side, and I figure, the Bitcoin stuff anyway is stuff that you're going to have to expect that kind of wildness in. I know that Don does not like Disney, though. Hey, David Lorenzo, thank you so much for the compliment. I know. You know what? I've been meaning to wear this sweater, and today just kind of felt like the right day. And boy, was I right on that one, right? It is good to see you all. Thank you for being here. We're going to have more news coming your way tomorrow. I will see you then. In the meantime, wow, this is what you call a heck of a news cycle, right? I'll see you then.